As forecast. Oh, this meeting is being recorded. So if you don't want to be recorded, don't type in chat. Um, so, as my warm-up question has forecast, this is the MIT Mystery Hunt pre-hunt workshop brought to you by Whoosh Galactic Trendsetters Meow. If you know how to say our name in other languages, please let us know in the chat because Google Translate does not handle the airplane noises correctly. This talk is intended to help acclimate newer solvers to the hunting and solving of puzzles, especially ones like the ones in the MIT Mystery Hunt, which tend to pride themselves on being very, very sparse on instructions. We are Whoosh Galactic Trendsetters Meow. If you have done the Galactic Puzzle Hunt, you might know us. If you haven't, you should check it out at galacticpuzzlehunt.com. We also won the MIT Mystery Hunt in 2020, which meant that we wrote last year's hunt in 2021. Then Palindrome won that hunt, and so they're writing this year. Now, despite that kind of chain of custody, so to speak, we don't actually have any information about what the 2022 Mystery Hunt is going to entail, except for what has been announced publicly. So the contents of this talk are going to represent our experience about what puzzle hunts generally contain and what the Mystery Hunt in particular tends to contain. But we don't know what the theme is. We don't know what the round structure is. We don't know where the coin is, but even if we did, we probably would try to trick another team into taking it from us. I'd like to take this opportunity, by the way, to wish Unicode equivalent best of luck with the 4 physical puzzles. So yeah, there'll probably be some things that we say during this talk that will be intentionally subverted by the writing team. So, these will be some good hints, but don't take them as gospel. As is tradition, this slide deck is not a puzzle. This presentation is not a puzzle. It contains some puzzles, but it's also not a meta puzzle or a meta puzzle. And you can go to that link on the front slide, or someone can paste it in chat for easier clicking, so that you can follow along if you prefer to, flip through the slides at your own pace. Maybe go back to something that I covered a little bit too quickly. Finally, if you have any questions at any point during the talk, we're going to give some small breaks between sections so that you can get those out. But if those just come to you, feel free to paste them in chat, and one of my colleagues will answer you. I might call it out if it's a broad enough question, but for the most part, I'm just going to try to go along. Cool. So this talk is going to contain a few topics. One, what is the Mystery Hunt? What should you expect from the Mystery Hunt as you do it? Second, how do you approach Mystery Hunt puzzles? And we'll give a few examples of those. And how do you approach Mystery Hunt meta puzzles? And we'll give a few examples of those. We'll also do a little bit of talking about remote collaboration tools. So this is going to be the second year for which Mystery Hunt is going to be entirely online. If you are more familiar with doing things in person, it might be useful to know some of the tools that we are aware of to help you with the remote solving experience. We expect to get to that portion of the talk at around 8:30 Eastern, so about an hour and 23 minutes from now. So if you come back in an hour and 15, you'll probably be just in time for that if you don't want to stick around for how to solve a puzzle. And finally, we'll just go over some last notes that didn't really fit anywhere else in the talk. Cool. So what is Mystery Hunt? Every year during MIT's independent activities period, a bunch of people throw the Mystery Hunt, and traditionally the team that won the previous Mystery Hunt. This has been a tradition since 1981, when Mystery Hunt was just a sheet of paper with a bunch of puzzles on it, and they led to an Indian head penny hidden somewhere on campus, as demonstrated in that picture there. And since then, it's kind of ballooned and gotten larger, and now we have workshops to help people prepare for the thing a week in advance. The objective of Mystery Hunt is to find a coin. We'll go a little into that in a little more detail in a moment. And the first person to successfully run a puzzle gauntlet and do so is awarded the dubious honor of writing next year's event. And so, as mentioned, we, Whoosh Galactic Trendsetters, won Mystery Hunt in 2020, so we hosted in 2021. Palindrome won last year, and so now they're on the hook to host in less than a week, TikTok. In general, every mystery hunt is going to have a theme, which is going to basically provide a narrative excuse for puzzles to exist. So last year, the theme was rescuing a professor from a perpendicular universe, and that was just kind of the structure around which all of our stuff was written. And so eventually you went into the perpendicular universe and discovered that it was just like MIT, except all the buildings were broken. And so, you needed to fix the buildings, and how do you fix the buildings while you solve puzzles, right? So the theme kind of gives this narrative excuse for everything to exist. But it's not necessary to really understand the theme in order to make a lot of progress in the hunt. So if this year's hunt theme happens to be Pokemon, which strikes me as very low probability, which is why I'm using it as an example. But if it happens to be Pokemon, that's fine. You can still participate even if you've never played any of the games, or you don't know what a Pikachu is. One way or another, the narrative will end in finding a coin in some sense. Now, what does this mean? Well, originally, as mentioned, this was a coin that was physically hidden on MIT campus somewhere. And the puzzles that you solved basically would give you little tidbits of information that would actually lead you there. Now, over the course of the years, the coin has gotten steadily less and less coin-like. For example, in 2010, I believe the coin was a wooden companion cube, and they made up some backronym that spelled out coin, right? So it's gotten less and less coin-like, although these past couple years, we've kind of had a return to form. So the winning team from last year, Palindrome, is going to have copies of this here coin. And it was never actually hidden on campus. We ended the hunt by doing this whole skit, and eventually someone pulled a coin out of a place and was like, oh my God, it's the coin. And then later we just mailed them all this thing. But it's just some trophy hidden somewhere. And of course, it's no longer actually hidden, because then it'd be way too easy for some random person just to find it, which is significantly easier than solving all our puzzles. So now what usually happens is once you solve enough puzzles, the running team will send you on the final runaround, and they'll either give you the coin at the end once you solve it, or they will hide the coin while you are on the runaround, so that it's guaranteed to be in that place when you finish it, but it wouldn't have been there if you looked like 2 hours earlier or whatever. Progress toward this point, as mentioned, is usually gated by a series of puzzles. And again, this generally started with the puzzle answers actually providing clues about the exact location of the coin, but as it's gotten larger and larger, and we've kind of branched out to our puzzles just having any answer we really feel like, it's become less and less directly related to the actual location of the puzzle, and more just a marker of your progress. Over the course of the hunt, a team that fully completes the hunt will expect to see somewhere above 120 puzzles. Last year, I think we clocked in at around 175, depending on how you're counting. The year before was like 150-ish. So, again, we're not really sure how long the hunt Palindrome writes is going to be, but I think smart money is on the above 100 puzzles kind of mark. You're not going to see all these puzzles at once, because that would be overwhelming if on Friday at noon it's just like, here, have 120 puzzles, go nuts. That'd be terrifying. Instead, what usually happens is you will be presented with a handful of puzzles, so 3 to 5-ish, and as your team solves them, more and more puzzles will unlock. So you solve one puzzle, 2 more puzzles unlock. And then you'll be able to solve those, or you'll be able to continue working on the ones you already had unlocked. And that just kind of keeps going throughout the hunt. These puzzles are also generally grouped into rounds. Last year we had, I think, 22 rounds. The year before that, there were 17, I want to say, something like that. And so the puzzles will be grouped in those rounds, and each round will have a meta puzzle, meaning that the answers to the puzzles for that round feed into the meta puzzle. And once you solve the meta puzzle, you're considered to have solved the round. And as you solve puzzles and meta puzzles, more and more rounds unlock, and this kind of fractally nested pattern continues. Usually rounds will unlock for solving meta puzzles, but sometimes solving regular puzzles will contribute to that unlocking structure, depending on how Palindrome decides to structure things this year. Once you solve enough meta puzzles, which is usually all of them, then you will initiate the final runaround. By runaround, we mean a thing that is a little bit more like a scavenger hunt that you may be familiar with. So, your team is sent to one location and there's a puzzle there and you have to solve that puzzle really fast. And you go to the next, and it points to the next location and so forth. And at the end of that chain somewhere, there's a coin. Usually this resolves the narrative and incorporates the answers or mechanics from many or even all of the hunt rounds. For example, I believe one year, one of the runaround components was a word search that contained every single answer to every puzzle in the hunt, right? And so you'd have to know what those answers are in order to solve enough of that puzzle in order to progress on the runaround. So it's a bit of this final challenge, final boss kind of thing. It's also a check to make sure that you have in fact done enough of the work. There were cases in the past where multiple teams can be on the final runaround at the same time, in which case it really is a race to see who gets to the end first. Increasingly, for example, the last 2 years, the final runaround has incorporated a dramatic skit and performances from the writing team, and writing teams contain a finite number of people. So generally, once you started the runaround, you were kind of on rails to get to the end and find the coin. But either way, once you start the final runaround, you should assume that you will get to the end eventually and probably find the coin there. The first team that does it wins the hunt, and they write next year's. Again, the format of things differ from year to year, so writing teams have a habit of changing things up to keep things fresh. So who knows? Maybe it's Palindrome, so you'll finish the final runaround, and then you have to do the entire hunt in reverse, and then at the beginning of the pre-beginning runaround, you find I don't know. Okay, whatever. We don't actually know. That's idle speculation. Again, only Palindrome knows these things. If you have questions about how this all impacts you, you can email puzzle@mit.edu to find out. How does this actually go down in time? Well, sometime around noon on Friday, we're all going to go to kickoff. And normally this would be in an auditorium, but we're virtual this year. So we'll do kickoff. Palindrome will put on a skit and they'll tell us what the theme is and kind of justify us doing all this stuff narratively. If there are any important announcements, for example, none of this year's puzzle answers contain the letter E. None of this year's puzzle answers require you to set your head on fire, so please don't do that. Important announcements like that tend to happen at kickoff, and it's usually pretty fun, so you should check it out. Then, usually about an hour later, puzzles will actually release. Now, this may be an hour, this may be 2 hours. Whenever Palindrome decides, that kickoff is done and they've had enough time to make sure their tech is finished and they finish writing the last 3 puzzles, then they'll launch the site at probably 1 p.m., maybe 2, I don't know. One way or another, puzzles will release sometime early Friday afternoon, and then it's a free-for-all. And we'll just all keep solving and solving and solving. Presumably, at some point, one of the teams will find the coin. Usually this happens at Sunday evening. Maybe during the night, maybe during the wee hours of Monday morning if things go really long. One way or another, someone's going to find the coin. We're not sure what happens after that. Sometimes the writing team stays open and continues to, accept new answers, to run the runaround and all this other stuff, and they just pull an all-nighter. Sometimes they're just like, nope, that's enough sleep deprivation for us, and we're done for the weekend. So again, we're not sure what's going to happen there, but you should attend kickoff to find out. And then usually there will be a wrap-up of some kind around noon on Monday, which will kind of tell everyone what the hunt looked like, give some nice statistics, do a blooper reel, show us some fancy scavenger hunt submissions, things that made us laugh. Stuff like that. So put a nice bookend on the whole thing. If you didn't see the whole hunt, you can get some closure on the narrative. when they do wrap up, and they'll say, this is how the whole thing happened, and we'll put a bow on it. In addition to all of those specific times, sometimes during the weekends there will be events. And events are usually of the nature, well, you'll get an announcement of some kind that says something along the lines of, at 8 p.m. on Saturday, please send 2 members who are not allergic to garlic to this chat room, where we definitely won't expose them to garlic, something like that, right? It is a timed event where you will send some small number of representatives from your team, and all the teams are going to be there, and then something will happen and it'll be cool. We did 4 of these last year. So for example, one of them was a crossword fencing tournament, because you cross swords, haha, get it? And there was a big thing, and we had Twitch commentary, and it was great. So those are really cool. You should check them out, and pay attention to announcements over the course of the weekend, because they will say things like, at 4 p.m. on Sunday, send 2 people who have perfect pitch to this chat room, right? Things like that. And that is basically everything that we know, that we are fairly certain will happen during the weekend. Again, specific details are up to Palindrome. If you have a burning need to figure out your schedule, you can probably email puzzle@mit.edu, and they might be able to tell you if you, are precluded from participating if you cannot get off work until 10 p.m. on Friday or something. But it's a long event, so like, you'll still be able to contribute even if that's true. And before I hand this off to Anderson to kind of explain what are puzzles, we'll take a moment to answer any questions people have about the way Mystery Hunt runs. Or questions about me specifically. I like long walks on the beach, candlelit board games. Are puzzles unlocked globally or per team? Per team. So you will not ride on the progress of of the front running teams, at least probably, right? Like I haven't quite figured out how to do that yet, but probably the progress of the front running team will not affect your progress, and you won't suddenly see 50 puzzles dumped on your lap as they blaze ahead of you. Is there a way to get hints? That's up to the running team. What is my favorite candlelit board game? Keyflower. Also Battlecon, also Exceed, also Concordia, also Great Zimbabwe, also Aeon Zen. Too cold for walks on the beach with that attitude, yes. Yeah, sometimes puzzles can get unlocked globally. So after a certain amount of time, you might notice puzzles unlock. This is especially important for small teams, because if you get stuck, usually you will never have more than like 10 to 15 puzzles unlocked at one time. But if you get stuck and you're sick of looking at those puzzles, sometimes there will be a time unlock that says, okay, the competitive batch of people is far enough ahead or whatever that, we're going to go ahead and unlock these things for everyone else. And we know that this will not, impact the 10 teams that have, staggered sleep schedules and they're pulling all-nighters and binging 5-hour energy. But yeah, it is a good bet that there will be hints, and I will talk a little bit more about that later. I think that is probably all of the questions, at least for now. I will be back later in case you want to ask me more about board games. But for now, I will hand it over to Anderson, who is going to talk about puzzles.
All right. Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm Anderson. Yeah. And if you have any further questions about Mystery Hunt or logistics or anything, you can just ask them in chat, and we'll answer them in chat. But I'll move on to talking about puzzles. Puzzles in the Mystery Hunt will probably be a little harder than the one I'm showing right here, but we'll get exactly into what sorts of what puzzles look like. So just for some basics, every puzzle will have, so there's sort of two things that pretty much every puzzle has in common. First, every puzzle has an answer The answer to this puzzle is always a short word or phrase, often in English. Often it's like something you might find in the dictionary or like on Wikipedia. And the second thing is usually you're not given instructions on how to get the answer, and you need to figure that out for yourself. And this often involves an aha moment, such as the one in the bottom right corner of the screen. And usually it'll be very clear when you do have the final answer, like all of the data. So the puzzle will give you some data and you need to get an answer out of it. You'll like by the time you get the answer, you'll have used all the data. It'll just fit together. And then for actually checking the answer, there'll probably be some page on the website that some box you enter the word and it'll tell you whether you're correct or not. And everything I say, pretend that I've added the word usually or like almost always before it, because hunts love to break the rules in various ways. For example, in 2020, there was a round where every answer was an emoji. So pretty much anything can happen. So these are like these are like 99% correct, but you never know what will actually happen in the hunt. All right, so just here's like what an example puzzle looks like. So every puzzle has a title. You can see on this puzzle that I've shown here, the title is Harmony. It's at the top. And it'll also sometimes have flavor text, which is this paragraph that I've circled. And the flavor text is like a little blurb, which sometimes provides hints for the puzzle, sometimes adds to the story. And so the title also can be a hint sometimes. Sometimes it's just a description of the puzzle, but no matter what, the title and flavor text should never be misleading. And the flavor text is often very oblique. So sometimes like you won't be able to use it until you've made some progress on the puzzle, and then it tells you what to do after that. And then below that will be the puzzle content itself. And the content can look like basically anything. So for example, in this puzzle, there's like some words in the left column, some images, comics in the middle column, and some audio clips in the right column. But puzzles, they can be like interactive games. They could even be physical puzzles, which are like physical objects that Palindrome is sending out. So yeah, so now we will go into a couple worked example puzzles. And just one quick note before we do this. So solving puzzles is very hard, and I'm gonna just be sort of going through each of the steps. And in an actual hunt, like any particular step might take a really long time. So just don't worry if it seems like I'm going like I can never solve this puzzle this quickly. Like you're not expected to solve the puzzles this quickly. This is just trying to get through a bunch of puzzles to give you all an idea of what sorts of things come up in puzzles. And yeah, we'll also at some points I'll like stop for maybe like 15-20 seconds to have audience participation. For those, if that happens, if you're experienced with puzzles, please let like the newer people say things in chat. So all right, so we will get started with this example puzzle, which is called Bumblebee Tune. I'll just click through to it. This is from the 2014 Mystery Hunt. And you can see there are these 10 video clips, and we can watch one of them, or you probably can't hear the audio, but basically there are a bunch of bees singing some song a cappella. You saw the words 10 letters go across the screen. Yeah. Thanks for yeah, you can also look at that in the link in chat. But anyways, so in many puzzles there's usually like an obvious thing you can get started with, and in this case the thing to do is identifying the a cappella songs. And in an actual hunt, this step would be it would take probably take a long time. It might be the bulk of the puzzle, but for this presentation, I'm just gonna identify them all for you. So these are all the songs, and I've also put in the number of letters that appear that scroll across the screen for each one. So yeah, and during the actual hunt, you might ask like the person on your team who really likes pop music, hey, you know, can you help me identify these songs? You might like call your parents or something. But we'll just be skipping that to get to the rest of the puzzle. And I guess the first question I'll have for anyone who wants to say things in the chat, just from looking at this table of songs and letters, are there any things that people notice about these? And I'll just, you know, if feel free to say anything if you like. There are no wrong answers here.
Well, the song names are in alphabetical order.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, so we have lots of great observations. Yeah, so one thing is the songs are all kind of old. They're all sort of like 60s, 70s songs. Yeah, someone said in chat that these are in alphabetical order, which is a very good observation. You see like Baby Love starts with a B. The Candyman, if you get rid of the leading articles, C, then like I, M, P, and so on. Yeah, and someone else also said that the number of letters don't actually match, so something weird is going on here. So when we have these well, all right, first, the fact that it's in alphabetical order, keep in mind that like that can help us if we only identified like 9 of the 10 songs, then like using the alphabetical order might help us identify the missing one by giving us like the starting letter. And also it helps confirm that the songs we have are correct. And like if one of them is incorrect, then it will probably be out of order, so we can fix that. So anyways, we now have these songs, we have these numbers of letters, but we need to get an answer somehow, which is like a short word. So how do we do that? And one very common tip in puzzles, like in puzzles in general, is just thinking about what we haven't used yet, or if anything feels weird. So yeah, so people are saying some good things in chat, but some of the things we might ask are like, can we find something related to these songs that have these numbers of letters? Or like you might look at the title, right? Why is the title Bumblebee Tune A instead of tuna? Like maybe it's a pun on the word tune, but what, like, is this the letter A important maybe? And then like there's another question, which is, why are there bee costumes in the first place? Because bees don't really have to do with like pop music, at least not that I'm aware of. So yeah, so if anyone wants to let's look at some of the say anything, like if anyone has any ideas in chat. Yeah, so yeah, band names is like a great idea you might look at. I think it might match for some of them, but it doesn't match for all of them, especially not this 34 letter one, which is a but yeah, okay, a lot of people are saying A and B sides, and that's a really interesting idea because that sort of explains why the title is Tune A and why there are B costumes. And yeah, so well, just in case anyone here doesn't know what a B side is, especially when songs were released on vinyl in the older days of music, there'd be an A side and a B side on the 2 sides of the record. And but if you don't know this, that's fine. As long as someone on your team knows this, then like you'll be able to get through this puzzle. And this is sort of like an aha moment, which is that we need to use the A sides and B sides. So that's the an aha moment in this puzzle. And in fact, if we just look things up, all of the 10 songs are A sides. And if you just look at the B sides, so like Baby Love's it's a song by the Supremes. You take the B side, it's Ask Any Girl. That is indeed 10 letters long. And all of the B sides match the number of letters. So this is a really good confirmation that we're on the right track. And people might have suggested other things, and like there are probably lots of great ideas here. This B sides thing just was the correct thing to do for this puzzle, but luckily it's immediately confirmed by the numbers of letters matching. All right, so now this is a great step, but we still need to get a short word or phrase somehow. So one thing we might do is like look at the first letters, but it's like A, I, Y, G, so that's kind of nonsense. And we might still ask, what haven't we used in the puzzle? This is a very useful question to ask. So like if we just scroll through the puzzle, for example, so a bunch of people are indeed saying something interesting, which is the number of bees. Why is the number of bees different in each of these videos? Like maybe someone like maybe the more B's are like for more complex songs, but that's like not really the case. And like, it really seems like the fact that they're like, all of them could have had the same number of B's, but they don't. So that's probably important in some way. One very common thing when you have like sort of smallish numbers, like like 4, we have like 4, 6, 8, is this thing called indexing. The first video, so I've listed the number of B's in each video. The first video for Baby Love has 8 B's. So we take the 8th letter of Ask Any Girl, and that is the letter I, so like ASK, ANY, GI. And this is a very, very common in puzzle. Oh, shoot, sorry. Yeah, sorry, I did not. Yeah, okay, yeah, here are the slides, my bad. So yeah, this indexing is very common in puzzle hunts because every puzzle needs to have a final answer, which is some word. So if you have like a bunch of words or phrases, one easy way to get an answer from that is taking one letter from each one. So whenever you have like sort of these smallish numbers, often indexing is a very good idea. And these, all right, so unfortunately these letters don't actually look good. So maybe this is not the right thing to do, but it turns out that we had an observation earlier that we might have forgotten about, which is that the songs are in alphabetical order. That means we might need to find a new order for these songs because otherwise it would be kind of weird if like the songs were, if this was the correct ordering, but also it was also alphabetical for like no extra reason. So there's many things we can do. Yeah, so some people are saying alphabetical, maybe use the artist names. Yeah, it turns out that the correct ordering for this turns out to be chronological. And if you actually look at the release dates, turns out that these 10 songs were each released in a distinct year from 1964 to 1973. So this is very strong evidence that this is the right ordering because the probability of this happening by chance is basically 0. So the puzzle constructor definitely put this in as confirmation. So we can resort this by the year. Sorting alphabetically by the B side is also a great idea. It just doesn't have to be right here, and you just need to. But luckily the year thing turns out to confirm itself very quickly. Yeah. Anyways, you see if you look at this column, the letters now spell out "I get around." So great, that's the answer. Let's call it in. But it actually turns out that that answer is incorrect. And the reason for this is that I Get Around is actually, it's a song by the Beach Boys. You have to do it one final time. The B side of that song is Don't Worry Baby. So that was the answer to this puzzle. So one quick side note on this is that Mystery Hunt usually does not confirm partial answers. So if you submitted I Get Around to the puzzle, they would just tell you that it's incorrect. But there's also no penalty other than like a potential time penalty for submitting too much, for submitting incorrect answers. So it's totally fine if you submit I Get Around. I'm sure a lot of teams did, like I'm sure our team did. But don't submit answers that like cannot possibly be like for example, like don't submit an answer like B sides once you figure out that it's B sides, because that doesn't use like the specific songs at all. And just remember that in most puzzles, you should be very confident when you have the final answer. Yeah, so just some general notes on this puzzle. This type of puzzle where we like identify things, took letters from them, it's very common, and it's known by the acronym ISIS, which is kind of unfortunate, but it's been entrenched for like quite a while. So that's what the puzzle hunt community calls it. It stands for Identify, Sort, Index, Solve. So the identify step was identifying the songs, realizing you need to take the B sides, then sorting the songs by the release year, indexing by the number of B's to get a letter, and then solving, I Get Around, and we get the final answer, Don't Worry Baby. And this is just one order we solved it. Like we actually, like when I presented we did the indexing before the sorting. So like maybe you might have noticed the release year staying first and then noticed the B side later. So there's many possible paths to solving a puzzle. This is just one of them. And also puzzles usually have built-in confirmation. So this puzzle was very good at that. It had the number of letters to confirm that your B-sides were the B-sides were the correct thing to use. And then also the years were all distinct from to 10 consecutive years, which is also confirmation that that was correct. And yeah, the very important tip, which we used several times in this puzzle, consider what you haven't used yet. And finally, yeah, there's this note about the order. So in this puzzle, the songs were in alphabetical order, which meant that we had to find a new ordering. And in general, if you are given some things and they have a very obvious order, it usually means you need to find a new ordering, or the order doesn't matter. And you can sort of think of it as like, the puzzle author does everything for a reason. So the reason that these are all in alphabetical order, it could be to like help you identify the missing ones, but it could also be because they want to disguise the correct order. And finally, there's this final step that was sort of recursive because we took the B-side one last time. Constructors love to do things like this because it's pretty elegant. It ties the whole puzzle together. So yeah, I see people are answering questions, or asking and answering questions in chat, which is great. But we'll just move on to the next puzzle so we can get through as many as we can. So this second puzzle that we're going to talk about is called "Thank You to Our Sponsors." It's from the 2021 Mystery Hunt, and we can click through to it. You can see that this title is "Thank You to Our Sponsors." This puzzle actually has flavor text, unlike the previous one. The flavor text is "Thank you to our most recent anonymous sponsors who have donated significant portions of their net worth to make this mystery hunt possible." And there are 15 descriptions, each of I guess donors, but we don't give the names, as well as the amounts of, each one has the amount of money they give. So just like in the first puzzle, there's like some things we like, one sort of quote unquote obvious thing to do is like, can we identify who these donors are? And you might, like, for example, if you like video games, you might see someone who's adventurous, they like cryptics that are very dangerous, and you might think that reminds you of Lara Croft. Or like you might see this elegant aristocrat and you might think of Downton Abbey. And so the first step of this puzzle is indeed, we could just identify all these people from their punny descriptions. And I've just, here's a table of the characters as well as the donation amounts. And for this, you might use Google, you might call some friends who like pop culture. We're just skipping the steps so we can get to the rest of the puzzle, but this is probably like the biggest part of the puzzle. And anyways, if anyone, I'll take 15 seconds, see if anyone has any comments about anything you notice about this table. Yeah, we really got a lot of money for last year's hunt. All right. So yeah, we got some good comments. So one of them is that these are sorted again. This time it's sorted by donation amount, not by the character name. So keep that in mind for later in the puzzle. And also, yeah, all these characters, they're fictional characters known for being extremely rich. I mean, for example, Richie Rich is literally named for being rich twice. And given that these are all sort of fictional characters, we might ask, do they have something more specific in common? And in chat, someone says, maybe there's a table of wealthiest fictional people. And well, if you want to, the best thing to do is, if you have the question, do these characters have anything in common, is Googling. So you can see here that I've Googled 4 of the character names together, and I got some articles like 15 richest fictional characters of all time. This is looking really good because there are 15 descriptions, and all these are talking about the 15 richest characters of all time. So it turns out that there's this thing called the Forbes Fictional 15, which is Forbes posts an annual list of the 15 richest fictional characters. And just a quick note that we did not need to identify all the characters to do this. So like we might have, when solving the puzzle in a real hunt, we might have identified like 8 of the characters, Googled them together, found the Forbes list, and then used the list to help us identify like the missing 7, for example. And this is the aha moment of this puzzle, which is that we're using this rich fictional characters list. So we can now look at the flavor text again. And one interesting thing in the flavor text, which might make more sense now, is the phrase most recent, which maybe we didn't understand at first, but now that we know that there's this Forbes fictional 15 list, that probably is telling us we want to use the most recent iteration of that list. Also, the phrase net worth means we probably want to look at the net worth of these people, which is provided on the Forbes list. Yeah, I don't know how they estimate that Jay Gatsby has like exactly $1 billion, but you know, that's what it is according to this list. So I've put this table here. And note that like these phrases were sort of notably sort of weird in the flavor text, like the most recent felt a little out of place. So oftentimes in the flavor text, there'll be like 1 or 2 keywords or phrases you need to use. And they also, you know, might not be clear until you've made some progress in the puzzle. Like we had to get the Forbes fictional 15 aha before we sort of understood the flavor text. And anyways, does anyone, are there any other parts of the flavor text that people think are important? And okay, yeah, so someone has said significant portions, and that's, yeah, a very good point. Yeah, significant portions is kind of weird as well. And that suggests, yeah, exactly what people are saying in chat, dividing the donation amount by the net worth, because they're all smaller. So maybe we'll look at the portion of their worth that they've donated. So I will do that in this table. And I've put in the percentages of the portions. So is there anything, does anyone want to say anything about what the percents look like? Yeah. So yeah. Well, I guess the first thing is, before we even get to what numbers they are, is that they're all integers, which means that this has to be on the right track, because if you just divide 2 random numbers, it's not going to be an integer percent most likely. So this is sort of like built-in confirmation that this is the right thing to do. And you know, maybe you might want to use them as use these numbers to index, like in the previous puzzle, but you know, it doesn't really seem to work out. Like Jay Gatsby is not 19 letters long. But also, like, for example, for Batman or Bruce Wayne, like what name do you index to? Do you index into Batman, Wayne? Do you index into like Mr. Burns or Montgomery Burns? So in this case, like the fact that there's this built-in ambiguity means that we probably aren't using the character names for their letters, because there's some ambiguity there. But yeah, as a bunch of people said, they're all less than 26 in the range 1 through 26, which means there's this very common code in puzzle hunts called the alphanumeric code, or also sometimes known as A+1 or A1Z26. And how this code works is you just convert the number 1 to A, the number 2 to B, and all the way down to 26 is Z. So we can do that. So here's a table with the alphanumerically converted letters, and you might notice, you know, this doesn't actually look great. However, if we remembered from earlier, the original donations were sorted by the order from smallest to greatest. So just like in the first puzzle, we probably want to find a new order. So some things you could do, so like sorting maybe by the character's name, sorting by chronologically. It turns out that the correct thing to do here is to order by the position on the Forbes list, because they already give you an ordering from 1 through 15. But you know, all these are sort of reasonable ideas. This just happens to be the correct one. And if you do that, you can see in this column, it says UK money 2 words. And this is a clue phrase. So the currency that they use in the UK is, you know, the pound. The 2-word version of that is pound sterling. So the answer to this puzzle is pound sterling. And yeah, so note that this puzzle had a final clue phrase, which lets the answer, which is sort of slightly different from the previous puzzle, which had a do it again step. Sometimes the puzzle will also just directly tell you the answer. It might give you the phrase like, the answer is pound sterling or something. But yeah, so you might also call in like the phrase UK money 2 words. And if you did that, you would be told that it was wrong. But then hopefully you go back and realize that this is cluing the answer pound sterling. So just some quick notes on this puzzle. Again, it's sort of like the same ISIS framework that we talked about earlier. You know, you identify the characters, discover the Forbes 15, then you sort by the position on the Forbes 15 list, then you index well, yeah, so I guess you index into the alphabet, but it's not exactly indexing. And then finally you solve by taking UK money 2 words, and that's pound sterling. And the other things are, Googling is very useful. The flavor text was helpful, but only after we got the Forbes fictional 15 aha. So sometimes the flavor text works like that. And also, yeah, just this thing about, we probably didn't want to index into the characters' names because they were ambiguous. So this is generally true in puzzles. If something feels too ambiguous to be right, it's probably not right. Like usually the constructors will give you some way of disambiguating it if they want you to use like the names, for example. And it ended with a clue phrase. This is like a term that people use. All right, so now we will quickly, we will move on to the third puzzle, or the third and last puzzle. Which is called MIT Confessions. And this puzzle was also from the 2021 Mystery Hunt. I can click through to it, but there's not much more. It's just this title, MIT Confessions, and 8 numbers. So the first thing you might do is, what does the title mean? So let's Google the title. And so if you're an MIT student, you probably already know what MIT Confessions is. But if you're not, then it's a Facebook page where students can post anonymous confessions. It's like pretty popular, and many other colleges have similar Facebook pages. And most importantly, every confession has a number, and we can actually go through to the Facebook page and find these confessions. And I've just done that, and here they are. So here's the table with the confession number and the content of the confession. So I'll take another 15, 20 seconds. Does anyone have any comments on like what they notice about this table? Anything? Yeah. Many people have immediately pointed out the number of exclamation points. And it's very suspicious because they all have different numbers of exclamation points at the end. And also, another thing is that there's no obvious ordering. So, unlike the first 2 puzzles. So maybe this ordering is just the correct ordering. Someone asked if any of these people consented to this. I'll just, spoil it and say that we planted all of these confessions before the hunt, which might be, you might have guessed. And another thing is that some of these confessions are a little sus. For example, I saw the guy who played Dr. Siddhant Mathur walking down dorm row. And that really feels like it's trying to clue like a specific person. And if you Google it, you'll find that he's from some television show. The actor who played him was Namit Khanna. So it really feels like this confession is trying to clue this person. So there's sort of 2 aha moments here, which first I'll say what they are, then I'll explain how we might have gotten them. But the first aha is that every single confession clues a single word that ends in MIT. So Namit, for example, or like submit for turning in your PISA. And the second aha is that the number of exclamation points matches the length of the word. So I'll just have a table with all the words here, but you can see that the clue for Namit had 5 exclamation points at the end. The clue for submit has 6, and so on. And how we might have actually figured this out during the hunt is we would look at the more sort of obvious clues first, like the Namit one, perhaps like commit. There's only like a couple words that mean checking in your code. Commit is probably one of the biggest ones. And then after that, you might notice the MIT connection. And then if you write down the number of exclamation points and like look at the words, you might notice that the lengths always match. So you'd probably start off by confirming a few things, and then from there you would find the rest of them. And you know that the number of exclamation points is probably important in the first place, just because there's different numbers of them. Like they could have all been the same, but the fact they're different means that they're probably relevant in some way. And we could have gotten these ahas in either order. So so there's a term for this enumeration, which just means enumeration is something that tells you the length of a word. This helps confirm that we're on the right track, and also helps with finding the harder ones, like maybe like emit, for example. And this is also a very good opportunity for online word searching tools. So I'll just have a very, very quick demonstration where for example, let's say this last one, I live all by myself, and honestly, it's the best with 6 exclamation points. Let's say we're not quite sure what that is. We might, there's a website called OneLook, which is very powerful at searching for words based on patterns. So we know that it's like 6 letters and it ends at MIT. So we put like 3 question marks, end with MIT, sort by how common these words are. And we like can look down, find which one of these is like I live by myself, and we see hermits. So this is like one way you might use online tools to help with answering some of these clues. Anyways, here are the list of the 8 answers. So we've done that. Does anyone see anything about this? Anything suspicious about this list? Yeah, a bunch of people are saying send cash. The initials of these answers, the first letters of all these answers spell out send cash. And this final step, I'll just spoil it because it's no. Although no one here is actually going to like look at the MIT Confessions page, but it turns out the day of the hunt, MIT Confessions made a new post. We asked them to make this post, which is, I was trying to solve a puzzle from the mystery hunt, and I realized I actually needed to reverse my final answer with 5 exclamation points at the end. So you might, so this is another sort of do it again step. A 5-letter word that ends in MIT and means send cash is remit. And then based on this confession, I actually need to reverse my final answer. So we reverse we reverse remit, and we get the word timer. And that turns out to be the final answer to this puzzle. A lot of teams did submit send cash for this puzzle. I think one team even tried to send us cash over Venmo or something. But yeah, so this final step was a little tricky, but if you were on the MIT Confessions page, you probably saw this very suspicious confession because it was at the top of the list. Yeah, and yeah, so also keep in mind that so we used OneLook to we used OneLook to help us find the word hermit. But for example, if we couldn't find one of the words, we could have also used like some similar word searching tool to like find the phrase send cash if we're missing a couple letters. Yeah. Oh, well, all right. We did not actually get anybody. Someone asked us, and then we told them, no, you do not need to send us money to solve this puzzle. Anyways, so just some quick notes here. The reading first letters is very, very common in puzzles. It appears all the time. So just don't forget that. And the reason it appears a lot is it's similar to why indexing appears a lot. It's a very easy way of getting single letters from longer words or phrases. And also this is an MIT event, so some puzzles will involve MIT knowledge. In this specific puzzle, the MIT knowledge was easily searchable, but others may be more tricky. You might need current students or alumni to have a chance at some puzzles. But it won't be like the majority of puzzles or anything. This is just it is an MIT event, so there will be some MIT related puzzles. And also this quick note about enumerations. So in this puzzle, the enumerations were done using the exclamation points. But normally in a lot of puzzles, there'll be this convention of having numbers in parentheses. So for example, there might be a crossword clue, which is like Big Apple State 3, 4. And the answer is New York. New is 3 letters long, York is 4 letters long. So enumerations are constructors will use this a lot to disambiguate certain answers. Obviously, we didn't want to do that for this puzzle because it would have been probably too obvious that it was related to a puzzle, which is why the exclamation points are a good way of disguising that. And finally, this puzzle also, like the Bumblebee puzzle, had a do it again step at the end, where we got a final clue, send cash. We had to do it one more time to find another word that ended in MIT. To solve that. So there is a 4th example puzzle on the slides. We will not be going through it for time reasons, but I recommend if you're interested, feel free to look through the slides. It walks through the puzzle, and I think it also I think all 4 of these puzzles sort of teach useful lessons for what to look for in a puzzle hunt. Anyways, here's just a quick summary of all of the advice or the notes from the 4 puzzles. Yeah, I think like I've said all these already, so you can I'll just take like 15 seconds so you can read all these again. One thing I think I didn't explicitly mention was you don't need to figure out every clue or subpart of a puzzle. So often puzzles generally won't expect you to do every single step. Usually, like if you have a 15-letter answer and you get 12 of the letters, that's probably enough to get the final answer, for example. So for when I was presenting these puzzles, I like showed you I showed you all of the identifications, but it's very possible that during the actual hunt, you probably won't have all of them. So you'll be working off partial information, but you can still get the ahas and you get to the final answer from that. Yeah, these word searching tools. Yeah, one thing that wasn't mentioned, which is part of the 4th example puzzle, is counting things. Oftentimes it's very useful to just like count everything and see if any numbers match up. I guess even in MIT Confessions, if we count the lengths of the words we have and find that they match up with the number of exclamation points. All right, so the final thing, I'll very quickly talk about some common puzzle genres. In particular, crosswords. Crossword clues appear a lot in the mystery hunt, or just in puzzle hunts in general. So if you don't do crosswords regularly, I recommend learning like the common conventions for crossword clues. For example, like crossword clues have to match the part of speech. The answer always has to have the same part of speech, for example. And you can learn more about all that in this blog post that I've linked to here. And for ciphers, there are 4 codes that I would say like you would expect to appear in every hunt, at least in some place, which are Morse code, Braille, flag semaphore, and 5-bit binary or ASCII. So you can also read about that. Read more. You can look those up, or also read more about it in the blog post. Great. So now after I guess I can take a couple minutes just as a break to answer like if anyone has any questions about any of the example puzzles or puzzles in general. Oh yeah, thanks, Yannick. Oh yeah. So, oh okay. Yeah, were these puzzles supposed to be easy? So these puzzles are definitely on the easier side, but I would say that they're, I would not say they're like easy by any means. Like I think all of them have some sort of tricky steps. So in an actual hunt, like, each of these puzzles could have easily taken like an hour or 2 hours to solve. So we really compressed that. All right, how many I guess someone can answer that in chat. I don't really have a good estimate of that. Yeah, okay. Okay, great. So let's move on to quickly talk about metapuzzles. Sorry, let me get some water. So as Charles mentioned earlier, metapuzzle is a puzzle that uses the answers to other puzzles. And it can sometimes use like other parts of the puzzles outside of the answers, but that's usually very rare. So usually you just take the answers, like you take the answer £sterling and then you use that in another metapuzzle somehow. And the answer to a metapuzzle is often a pun that answers some story related question. So for example, in the 2021 hunt, each of the buildings had a problem, and there was the problem with the infinite corridor was that it was infinitely long. And so the question that was trying to be answered was, how do we make the infinite corridor finite again? The answer to that was hire a contractor, which, you hire a contractor for building problems, but also you contract the, I shouldn't explain the joke. But very often you'll know which puzzles are metas. They might be bolded on like the list of puzzles, or they might be set off from the rest of the puzzles. And solving one is usually a very huge celebratory moment. It's sort of like the culmination of the entire round, where once you solve the puzzle, you finish the round, you might advance the story of the hunt somehow. And one sort of analogy I like to use is compare, which I think Left Out also used last year, is comparing. They're sort of like bosses in video games, where when you're playing a video game, you gradually level up, you get some upgrades, you get items, and then you're strong enough to beat the boss. And in a puzzle hunt, you gradually solve puzzles, you get more answers until you finally have enough to solve the meta. And there's many variations on this. For example, there are meta puzzles, which use puzzles from which uses answers to meta puzzles. There might be puzzles that are part of multiple metas and so on. So anything I say here, just take it with a grain of salt. So we'll quickly go through two example metas. Both of these will be from the students round in the 2021 Mystery Hunt. So this meta was called Burton Connor. All the rounds, all the metas in the students, all of the metas in the students round were named after dorms on MIT. So Burton Connor is one of the dorms. And this is what the puzzle looks like. This is the whole puzzle. There's just these blanks with some letters highlighted. And so it turns out the answers, there are 4 answers that go into this meta. The answers are Department of Magical Law Enforcement, Dr. Strange, Ellen Tebbets, and the Go-Go's. So you would have, there were 4, you would have solved these individual puzzles and gotten their answers, and you're now using them in this meta. So the first thing you'll notice is we probably want to fit them into the blanks somehow, but the answers don't fit directly. So we might ask, can we find related words to put in the blanks? For this, I'm just gonna directly spoil you on the answer, because this is not an easy aha. But it turns out that, for example, if you just Google Ellen Tebbets, you look it up on Wikipedia, it turns out to be a novel by Beverly Cleary, and Beverly Cleary does fit in the final set of blanks. And the initials are BC, and Burton Connor is called BC as well. I mean, or you don't need to live on MIT to guess that. Belinda Carlisle is in the Go-Go's. Benedict Cumberbatch played Dr. Strange, and in the Harry Potter books, Bartemius Crouch was one of the leaders of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. So we put these names in the blanks. We take the indicated letters, and for the first names we get UDDY, and the second names you get UR. The last names you get URRY. This, maybe we did something wrong, but actually, once again, this puzzle has another do it again step. If you add B to the beginning of Uddy and add C to the beginning of Uri, you get Buddy Curry, who is some football player, and that turned out to be the answer to this puzzle. And sorry, earlier I said that meta puzzles usually had an answer that was sort of punny and answered a question. This was actually a sub-meta puzzle of the dorm row meta. So the dorm row meta had the answer that was sort of a punny answer. This was just this Buddy Curry fed into another meta on top of that. So this is the final answer to Burton Connor. The second example meta I'll use is Massey Hall, which is also from the students round. It's also from the dorm row meta. So the answer is also just going to be, it's not a punny phrase, but you can see that here's the puzzle. This one, unlike the first one, does have some flavor text. Massey Hall residents enjoy moving around in their dorm, a building which has often been described as MIT's castle, and we have a chessboard with a rook and a bunch of pawns on it. And you might, if you know chess, this is like not a legal position. You can't have pawns on the first rank. But it turns out this meta puzzle also had 4 answers. These are the 4 answers: archived editions, hospital benefits, gathered children, and distinct features. So I guess for this, I'll let people talk let people mention any observations in chat for the next 15 seconds. So we have some very great observations. People have noticed that all of these are 2 words with 8 letters each. And also, the first letters of these words go from A through H. And note how I subtly decided to use a monospace font for this, which made it much easier to see compared to this slide. And that means that there is a way to write these letters on the chessboard. For example, the word archived. So on a chessboard, the columns are represented by letters, the rows are represented by numbers. So we can write archived going straight up on the first columns because A1 through A8, so ARCHIVED. So I've just done that here. You can see we were able to convert our answer words into letters on a chessboard. So of course we haven't used the rook or the pawns yet. If you're familiar with chess, you probably have a good idea of what to do, but the flavor text explicitly says moving around. So you might think about moving the rook around. And in chess, a rook can move in any direction, or horizontally or vertically, in any number of spaces until it hits a piece. So turns out that what you have to do in we might need to move the castle in some way. Yeah, and it turns out that for this puzzle, there's a unique path to capture all the pawns while making a capture on every move from the rook. And the fact that you can capture them in the first place makes sense because they're opposite colors. And if you do that, and then you take the letters corresponding to the pawns in order of capture, it spells out the answer Richard the First, which is the answer to this meta puzzle. Yeah, and sorry if you're not as familiar with chess, but this is puzzle hunting is indeed it's a team, it's a collaborative effort. So as long as someone on your team knows enough about chess to get this, then you'll be good. All right, so those are two example metas. Now I'll quickly just talk a little bit more about more general metas. So there's these terms that people often use to describe metas. You'll probably hear them a lot. There's shell meta versus pure metas. So a pure meta generally only directly uses the answer to the puzzles, maybe with some extra flavor text, while a shell meta has some puzzle content which you need to combine with the answers to get the answer to the meta puzzle. This distinction is just for discussing meta puzzles. It's not like the puzzle pure versus shell metas solved totally differently. It's more of like a sliding scale. So, for example, the Massey, the chess puzzle that we solved, was definitely a shell meta because you needed to use the pawn captures to get letters, whereas the first meta, the BC meta, it's technically a shell meta, but it's definitely more pure because the first step of associating the answers to people with initials BC is that has no shell involved. That's just something you had to figure out for yourself. Also, another distinction people make with metas can use the letters of the answers or the semantic meaning of the answers, or maybe both. So, for example, in the BC meta, it only used the meanings of the answers. So all the things were associated with people with initials BC. While the chess meta, we did not use the meanings of the answers at all. We only used the letters by writing them into the chess grid, into the chessboard and taking some of them. And often you can get a feel of what is important based on what the answers look like. For example, if all the answers are the same length, then yeah, you probably want to do something with the letters because this is a letter-based property that you found. So I will say that both of these metas were pretty simple since they were sub-metas of a larger meta. But I think they are good examples of the kinds of things like you should know when you're solving metas. But otherwise, metas are a lot like puzzles. But yeah, just keep in mind that most metas will be quite a bit more complex than this. And also just some quick notes about meta puzzles versus puzzles. So meta puzzles usually have the same solving process as puzzles. You get some data, you need to get a final answer, you use that data somehow to get the final answer, and there's an aha moment. For example, the aha that these answers are all associated with people with initials BC. But they do have like some qualitative differences because they're meta puzzles instead of puzzles. And by far the biggest one of these differences is that meta puzzles are almost always solved with partial information, because normally you're not going to solve all the puzzles in the round before tackling the meta. You'll probably get stuck on one of them anyways. And besides, like many metas are usually written so that they can be solved with without all the answers. Usually a good rule of thumb is about 2/3 of the puzzles in a round should be enough to solve the meta. And working on a meta puzzle, you can sort of think of it as a gamble, because either you work on the meta puzzle now and maybe you can solve it, or you can work on one of the individual puzzles in the round. And if you solve that, you can get more data, which can maybe make solving the meta puzzle easier. So it's like sometimes you have to make this decision. And the other thing is that meta puzzles, as you might guess, often involve just staring at a list of words, trying to find something in common. This happens a lot in puzzles as well, of course, but it happens in pretty much every meta just due to how they work, since you're using the answers from the puzzles, which are all words. And finally, there's this thing called back solving, which is when you get an answer to a puzzle without through the meta puzzle without solving the puzzle itself. So one example of this is, let's say you're solving this Massey chess meta, and you only have three out of the 4 answers, so you can only fill in 6 columns of the chessboard. But even if you are missing some letters, you probably still have enough to get the answer Richard I. And then finally, you know that the remaining answer needs to have 2 words, which are both 8 letters long. One of them begins with H and the other one begins with B. And you also know some specific letters that have to be in those words. So just from solving the meta, you might be able to solve the puzzle in that meta without even looking at the puzzle, just from the meta itself. So this is called back solving. You'll hear this term a lot. And sometimes back solving the puzzle can help you progress in a hunt, but usually it's not that helpful because you've already, when you solve the meta, you've already finished the round. So back solving the puzzle won't help you in that round anymore. But sometimes, if there's a hunt where like solving a puzzle unlocks another puzzle, then back solving might let you unlock, a puzzle. That is meta puzzles versus puzzles. And just finally, I've said this multiple times now, but there are many ways that hunts can break the rules. Here are some of the ways that past mystery hunts have broken the rules, such as puzzles that seemingly don't have any content or actually don't have any content, or a round that has infinitely many puzzles, or a puzzle that can actually only be back solved and cannot be forward solved. And all of these things have, as far as I know, have only happened once. But this is just to give you an example of like ways that hunts can break the rules. And Palindrome probably will have some rounds that break the rules in some ways, because teams like doing crazy things. All right, great. So I guess I'll take like another minute or two if anyone has questions about puzzles or meta puzzles, and if not, we can move on to Andy. So in chat, that's a very good point, that sometimes even if you don't have the meta puzzle, you might just notice something common about the answers in the round that can help you with solving or back solving puzzles. Yeah, and there are many different possible round structures, like nested metas, or just like really weird metas that contain puzzles. All right, so I guess we can continue to the remote collaboration. Oh, okay, one more puzzle. Yeah, any advice for how to approach for new solvers, not get frustrated? So I assume other Galactic people can say a lot about this, but yeah, it is very. I think like the biggest suggestion I would have is just getting some practice for looking at previous metas, how they worked, just to know the things that can come up. And metas, you're almost always going to be solving them in a group. So like if you can't figure out something by yourself, like that's like it's meta is like more often than other individual puzzles are going to be collaborative efforts. Yeah, yeah, metas are almost always going to be clearly labeled. I mean, I would like to say always, but there have been like, some exceptions, but those exceptions are very rare. It's usually very obvious which puzzles are metas. Someone asked, are metas clearly labeled as such? All right, yeah, so I guess we can move on now. Obviously, people feel free to continue asking questions and we can answer them in chat, but I will now hand it over to Andy to talk about remote collaboration.
Hello, everyone. I'm Andy, and I'm here to talk about remote collaboration. I've been remote solving with Galactic since 2019, and well, now we're all kind of in that boat one way or another. So it's time to learn about tools that you can use to collaborate online. Galactic has never participated in a remote mystery hunt, at least from the solving side. So this presentation will rely a lot on Left Out's presentation from last year, which you can access over the slides there. Left Out's presentation goes into a lot more detail than we're going to go, but I'd like to take time and give a brief overview of the basics. So our biggest recommendation here is just to use Discord for team coordination. It's a central hub for text chat, video chat, and voice calls. And it can handle a lot of people at once. There are other options here. Slack, for example. Many of you might use Slack at work and be familiar with that. There's also Google Meet and Zoom for video. And you might research and find your own options. It's worth noting that Google Meet and Zoom both have time limits for free users. So you should research what limitations your platform of choice has. And Left Out's presentation does have a more detailed comparison between all of those options. One thing that we also found useful was called GatherTown, which was a virtual space that let us interact with each other, move around. We used it for a sort of writing retreat for hanging out in a virtual space. And it was a nice way to have that social element back during the remote writing process. So while you're setting things up, you want to make sure that anyone who hasn't used Discord or Slack or whatever technologies you're implementing before has a chance to get comfortable with how it works, what they can do, and where everything is. Things like figuring out how to organize your server, how you're going to be using it, if you've got any guidelines for using it. Those all have to be nailed down before hunt starts, just to make sure that everyone's comfortable with things going forward. Our recommendation is to definitely make sure you have a few crucial text channels. The rest of the server can be pretty freeform, but we found that these are fairly critical to have in your server. You want one for announcements from team leadership, anything important that everyone needs to know as soon as possible. You need one to ping the team and call in for teammates who might be experts in different areas. You want one to keep track of the hunt status, which metas you've solved, what's happened so far with the story, if there's any interactions that have been recorded or revealed to the team. And then one so that you can coordinate who's going to an event, so that you don't end up in a situation where you have 5 people who all go to the same event that only needed 2 people, or where you had 3 people that were willing to go to an event and none of them realized that they were needed. Make sure that you've got permissions set up in the Discord server. This is more of an advanced thing, and only 1 or 2 people probably need to be involved with this, but everyone on the team should probably be able to create and move around text channels, because hunt is a very dynamic thing and you need to be able to move fast to keep everything up to date. We use roles in Discord to mention and notify different skill sets of people. For example, people who are good at crosswords, or people who have experience with the MIT campus. Overall, your goal with collaboration tools should be make sure that there's not the situation where you have multiple independent groups who are all trying to solve the same puzzle by themselves. If you've got 2 groups of 3 people who are racing to an answer, it's much better to have those 6 people aware of one another and putting their progress together. Especially because you have physical puzzles that are being mailed out to different locations around the world. So here's some more tips for Discord, our top recommendation, just to help you get your bearing. We'd recommend that you download the desktop app or the mobile app instead of using the web client. The web client is nice, but it's also limited, and it can be hard to wrangle when you also got like 5 spreadsheets open in your web browser. We recommend that you have a specific workflow for wrangling new puzzles. What we do is create a new text channel that has links to the puzzle spreadsheet, and necessary files. Once we're done solving the puzzle, we make sure to move the channel to our archive so that nobody has to look at it anymore. The spreadsheet side of things is largely automated through our Galactic software. Please use push to talk or establish some sort of etiquette around voice channels. If you have 10 people trying to talk at once, or if you have somebody eating in the background, or they're chatting with other people who are in the room with them, it just makes everything overwhelming and a lot more difficult to deal with. We'd recommend using screen share if you've got anything like a program on your computer or an image that you're working on, or anything that you just want to show off to your team. You can get screen share through video chat. There's actually an option in Discord that just lets you stream your screen instead of turning on video. Don't forget to pin important posts and channels. For example, in a puzzle channel where you left the puzzle files, or in an event coordination channel where you've got the actual call for the current event. Finally, there's lots of Discord bots that you should look into to help automate things. We've got a few examples here. And then, of course, we strongly recommend custom team emoji for team morale, and just because they're great. We have Professor Yu here, as well as a cuttlefish that really loves you. For spreadsheets, if you're using Google Sheets, make sure that everybody has shared the sheet with themselves. When you open the sheet, in the corner of the screen, there's a little link that says share. Click that, add yourself, and click OK. Because if you don't, you're going to end up with this anonymous zoo that you can see on the right-hand side here. And I know anonymous animals are funny, but it also makes it harder to track who's on the puzzle with you. Like we mentioned before, use monospace fonts. There's a few fonts available in Google Sheets. They help to make sure that the answers, it's easier to see patterns in the answers, and you can notice things like diagonalizing or first letters. If you've got a crossword in your spreadsheet, make 2 copies of the grid, one with the numbers so that you can block out which words have been finished in the crossword and keep track of what numbers still need to be solved. There's going to be some more specific tips at the end of the presentation as well. So, what software do you need to work together with your team? A lot of it depends on size. With a small group, don't get complicated. All you need is a spreadsheet and a Google Drive setup, and then just work with your team over whatever chat software you have. Keep the spreadsheets updated with new puzzles, the status of metas, and just make sure that people are staying on top of it. You don't need to get much more elaborate than that because you don't have that many people to account for. But as the team gets bigger, you definitely want to make sure a lot more things are automated because of the large number of people that are just making updates, submitting answers, unlocking new puzzles, and so on. Galactic used Google Sheets with scripting for pretty much most of its solving history. And then when we decided we wanted to try and really win Mystery Hunt, we made Galacboard, which was a fork of Codex's Blackboard tool, which seems to have worked out. Similarly, many teams have their own software. Again, every team is different. Every team's needs are different. But there are some publicly available tools, which we mentioned on the slide here. Personally, a recommendation is Cardboard, which was made by Cardinality. We've got a link here. It's actively being maintained. It's well documented, and we're going to have a demo after this section of the presentation. So stay tuned. Otherwise, you can check the puzzle hunt topic on GitHub for other puzzle collaboration software. And again, make sure that you give this a test run. Find a small hunt, find something where you're going to be using it like you usually would, and make sure that everybody understands how it works. So now I'm going to call up Ryan and Sushi from Cardinality so that they can give you a demo of their cardboard software.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Andy. And thank you to Galactic for inviting us here. Hi, everyone. I'm Ryan. I'm on Cardinality. It's my 6th or 7th Mystery Hunt or so. I'm here with Sushi as well, who's going to do a brief intro, I think.
Hello, I'm Sushi, also on Cardinality. This is my 4th mystery hunt. I guess I worked on Cardboard with Ryan, and I know we're excited to show everyone what it does. Are we good? Yeah, and I'm also happy to answer any questions in chat while Ryan is presenting.
Sorry, just give me 1 second to. Okay, sorry, I accidentally muted myself. Okay, great. Yeah, brief history or context for what Cardboard is. Most large mystery hunt teams have their own software to automate a lot of important tasks during mystery hunt. Things that Andy was just talking about, creating spreadsheets, Discord channels, coordinating things, whatever. So this is for Cardinality, our software that does this. Cardinality, we have about 75-ish people, plus or minus. And I guess we are large enough to have finished the hunt last year. So we do need more sophistication than a much smaller team. But I think if you're on a much smaller team, maybe this is not, this is a bit overkill. But at any rate, here it is. The tech stack, if you're really curious, is Django on the back end, React on the front end, and we deploy it on Heroku. And as we mentioned, the source code is on GitHub, so you can use it for your own team if you want. We'll talk about that briefly at the end. So yeah, here I've shared the main interface for a hunt on Cardboard. This is the Star Rats hunt that was released in advance of Mystery Hunt. Right now it's empty, but we can go to the hunt page and add a first puzzle by copying URL. This puzzle is called Algernon. Add it here. And it creates a few useful things for us. It created a chat channel. A spreadsheet is created asynchronously, and we'll show up here in a second. Here it is. And yeah, we can click through to this spreadsheet to see. So here it's actually based on a template. We have one centralized Sheets template that we copy for every puzzle, which is useful if you want to have some custom functions or maybe a tab for notes or history or what have you. Here the template is just in this drive folder. And then one important thing actually is we enforce uniqueness by the URL of the puzzle. I think any team should have some way of making sure that you don't have multiple spreadsheets for the same puzzle, probably. Because as Andy said, you don't want people working on the same thing. Great, so let's suppose we solve this puzzle. I'm not going to give any spoilers. Let's say the answer is cats. You can see it updated the title of the spreadsheet. We can also edit the answers. Maybe the answer is not cats, maybe it's actually dogs. Whatever. We updated it just to let the solvers know that the puzzle's been solved if you're working on it. Yeah, so we can add another puzzle. Maybe the next puzzle is this evil puzzle. And let's go over to Discord and just have a look at the Discord integration. We have an announcement channel on Discord. You can see messages for puzzles being unlocked, solved, their answers changed. And we also create separate text and voice channels per puzzle so that we can coordinate on puzzles. So in the text channel, there's some links related to the puzzle. And then the voice channels, having a separate voice channel per puzzle lets us see quickly who was working on what puzzle just by looking at Discord, which we found worked really well last year. And the other thing we have in Discord is this reaction roll section where you can react to rolls using Carlbot, which was mentioned, to indicate that you're interested in certain types of puzzle, which I think is also really nice because often Mystery Hunt will have particular niche puzzles. Maybe you're really into, knitting or biology or whatever, and maybe there's one puzzle in the hunt this year that's about your niche, and you really want to see that puzzle when it comes out. So we have reaction rules for that. In actuality, we use a lot more than this, but I only set up 5 for the demo. You can see I'm using this crossword roll. So if I go back to this puzzle and actually tag it with this crossword tag, then I get a nice notification in Discord here in the announcements channel. So that's kind of fun. Yeah, I mentioned these tags. They are how we manage the metadata for puzzles for the most part. So you can tag it with different attributes of the puzzle, things they're about, as well as we have a few special tags. Just one for back solved so that we actually know which puzzles have been back solved. In case people are wondering, how did we get this answer? Maybe the answer is, we didn't solve the puzzle. And then we also have these high and low priority tags to just indicate that things are really important or less important. Those will affect the sorting of the puzzles on the page. Right now, there's like 2 puzzles, so the sorting is not very interesting, but in general, we do it kind of chronologically, so the most recent puzzles are at the top. But then high and low priority will bump things up and down. And we also have the status drop down. Just if you've given up on a puzzle, maybe mark it as stuck, or maybe you're stuck at the extract stage. You don't know what to do. Just lets people know that that's what's going on with this particular puzzle. Yeah, and then this is synchronized with other people. So actually Sushi in the background just added a puzzle. You can see it automatically was added here. And then metapuzzles are also very important to deal with somehow. So in this case, for this hunt, I think the metapuzzle is titled Star Rats. It's located at this URL, and it is a meta. And then we group individual puzzles under this meta to have them sorted underneath it. I think as Anderson was mentioning, there are a lot of weird things that can happen in Mystery Hunt, like puzzles can be in multiple metas, puzzles can have multiple answers even. So we have some handling for those edge cases. But anyway, one other nice thing that we have here is this Star Rats meta actually has the answers for the feeder puzzles automatically added to the sheet. In general, you'll probably find it useful to have an organized way of keeping track of which puzzle answers go with which meta. So we just automated that. And the last thing that I want to talk about is statistics. You can see we have some stats at the top of the page. We also have a stats page with a nice graph for our fake hunt. We solved 1 puzzle, we have 4 unlocked, and so on. because everyone loves stouts. This is actually a graph from last year, taken pretty late in the hunt for us. So it's just kind of cool to visualize the team's progress over time. You can see that we're degenerates, so you don't really see much because there aren't really that many level areas. But anyway, that's pretty much it for the software itself. So the source code is on GitHub. This is the GitHub page, and we can link it in the chat. And there's a setup guide here for how to set it up with instructions. It cost us a few dollars to host it on Heroku last year, and the setup I think is not too complicated. It's mostly just setting a bunch of variables. But if this is something you want to set up for yourself, then I recommend trying to figure it out soon, because I think some of the Google permissions things could be a little annoying to set up for the first time. And yeah, that's about it. You have...
Hi. Could I see the chat feature? I don't think it was demonstrated.
Yeah, we use Discord. Can you see Discord? Hope so.
Oh, so the chat channel links to the Discord? Or...
Oh, yeah. Yes. So there's a link in the UI to the chat channels. Yes, these link to Discord. In this case, it's linking to the web.
Oh, okay, thank you.
But actually, another kind of helpful Discord tip we've discovered is you can use Command K in Discord to search for individual channels. So it can get kind of hairy without this, but here we can search for the Star Rats channel. And then from here, we can join the voice channel for it. But yeah, we use Discord for our chatting. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. If you have any problems, if you decide that you do want to use this for your hunt and you run into any problems, feel free to open an issue on the GitHub page, or if you prefer, you can just send an email to us at cardinalitypuzzles@gmail.com. I'll put that in the chat as well. And that's about it. Yeah, thanks so much.
Cool. So thank you, Anderson, Andy, and Ryan, for presenting all of those cool things. Hopefully, those of you who are new to this got something out of that. Those of you who are old hands may have learned something. I certainly had not seen cardboard before this, so that's a really cool tool. We might have to try that this year. But yeah, so now we're just going to go on to some final hints and tips. Just stuff that didn't really fit anywhere, or that, you know, I wanted to reiterate, for example, just in case these things didn't get through. A good place to discover all this stuff I'm about to talk about is puzzles.mit.edu. I believe there's a link somewhere on there to their resources page, and that's going to provide all kinds of links to, you know, old mystery hunts, to, you know, the Have You Tried PDF, stuff like that. But I'll also point out a few things. And of course, if someone could post the tiny, actually, you know what, I'll just do it myself. You can also go to the slide directly with this link and be able to actually click on some of these links instead of just sadly touching your screen. First of all, a good way to prepare for Mystery Hunt is to do some practice. So this year, Palindrome has managed to write a pre-hunt round of puzzles called Star Rat, which you just saw kind of in the middle of that demonstration from Ryan. It is at starrats.org, and it's a good way to kind of test your setup, make sure that at least a few people are familiar with how the whole thing works, and also to kind of get a feel for the style of puzzles that Palindrome likes to write. So, you know, once again, we can't tell you exactly what's about to happen, but, you know, you can kind of get a feel for what you might want to keep an eye out for by taking a look at Star Rats, and you'll have a little more time to think about it and a little less time pressure. That said, Palindrome has been careful to emphasize that solving Star Rats is in no way mandatory for Mystery Hunt, and it will not help you to solve this except that it is practice. So, don't feel like you absolutely have to go do that thing. If you don't want to, just, spend the rest of the time stocking up on snacks and sleep. There are also some easier puzzle hunts. In particular, we'd like to recommend the DP Puzzle Hunt at dp.puzzlehunt.net or Colby's Curious Cook-Off at curiouscookoff.com. Both of these things are scaled to probably about a team of 2 to 4 newer solvers could probably take care of these within an afternoon or two. And those will both demonstrate some of the techniques we've talked about here, making sure you remember to read the first letters of things, thinking about pieces of data that you have not used in the puzzle construction yet, spotting common puzzle hunt encodings like Morse code and Braille embedded in things, stuff like that. So you might want to try those out as well. But of course, there's a lot of other hunts, and even though 2021 was kind of crap for other reasons, there have been a lot of puzzle hunts published this year. Like it didn't used to be a thing where a bunch of major teams would write their own hunt and put it out there, but now there are. So like there is a Cardinality hunt. A few of the people who are on Palindrome also wrote Burn After Solving this year. There's the Galactic Puzzle Hunt, which is us. There's the Teammate Hunt by our sister team. There's the UMD Hunt, which is done by the University of Maryland. There's the CMU Hunt, Carnegie Mellon. All these other hunts and more are linked to either on puzzlehuntcalendar.com or at puzzlehunt.net. And that site in general actually has a bunch of resources. It's maintained by one of our colleagues, Brian Chen, who's put a lot of work into that. Indexing a lot of hunts and letting you know how large they are, and just having a bunch of other tips in general. So, check out that website. I'm sure it'll have tons of stuff for you to take a look at that'll kind of get you up to speed, or at least give you an excuse to, dig deeper into this weird and brain melting world that we've kind of set up. And finally, very specifically, I'd like to call out learning spreadsheet wizardry. A lot of puzzle hunts these days are solvable primarily through spreadsheets, and they're really great just for organizing information, for collaboratively working on individual clues and filling them out, for sorting things in many different ways and trying to figure out what the correct sort order is, that kind of thing. And one thing is learning how Google Sheets works and what kind of wizardry you can put into formulas is really, really helpful for getting through the hunts. So last year, during the 2021 Mystery Hunt, we had a puzzle called Hey, Can You Give Me a Hand with This Puzzle, which is specifically a spreadsheet walkthrough. So that can be a puzzle that can just kind of drag you through all the things you might want to use a spreadsheet for, and the formulas that make them tick and all that other stuff. So check that one out. Brian Chen also wrote yet another puzzle hunt spreadsheet tutorial. He put that out maybe a week or two ago. But that is also linked on this slide if you want to check that out. That just has a bunch of things laid out in a less obtuse way, right? So like, hey, can you give me a hand with this puzzle? Is a puzzle. It is intentionally sneaky in a few places and does not just hand you the answers, because of course it was a puzzle in a puzzle hunt. The spreadsheet tutorial is a little bit more forthcoming with the details there. So if you aren't up for the tutorial author being coy about random crap, the tutorial is also there for you. But both of those are great. Please check them out. Oh, am I repeating things? It's fine. Cool. You might want to stock up on a few things ahead of time in order to do Mystery Hunt. In particular, you will probably want to make sure at least one of your teammates has access to a printer. Last year, there was at least, or was it during the Galactic Puzzle Hunt? There was a puzzle called Not to Scale that required you to do some origami. I did that puzzle entirely in my head using Google Slides to track dotted lines, but it probably would have been easier if I had a printer. So you might want to get one of those. Colored writing implements like colored pencils, markers, that kind of thing, so you can like draw things out. Those are great. Scissors, a ruler, tape, all these things are fantastic. If they hand you a puzzle that's very clearly meant to be like printed out and put on a table and taped together, and you've got like a 40-foot long strip of paper going out in the hallway, random crap like that. There might be one like that. So you should probably have this stuff ready in advance. It's also super helpful if one of your teammates is familiar with image editing software of some kind. I'm a fan of GIMP because it's free, unlike Photoshop, which you may have to pirate or pay $100 for. Paint.net is also pretty good, but you should probably have a few teammates who are just familiar with image editing software, just so that like you can do some of these things that are easiest if you have like things in layers, and you know you can draw on the Sudoku that doesn't quite fit into the normal Sudoku solving software, stuff like that. So you know, if you don't have access to these things, now is a good time to get a hold of them instead of, you know, being 12 hours into the hunt and being like, wow, I really wish I had gone shopping earlier. Also snacks. Snacks are a good material to have in advance. Finally, it's a very common trope among puzzle hunts, you know, help lists, self-help sheets, I don't know what you'd call them, to do a have you tried kind of thing. So here's ours. Number one, check your work. Please check your work. You're going to be 36 hours into this hunt and sleep deprived, and you might have missed something. You might have, you know, miscapitalized something in a way that matters. You might have misspelled something. You might have fat fingered a year or something like that. If you are stuck and something doesn't make sense, check your work. It will save you a ton of time. It'll save your teammates who pick this puzzle up after you go to sleep a ton of time, stuff like that. Google everything together. We saw that during one of the earlier puzzles that Anderson presented, that one of the steps was just Google a bunch of the clue answers together, right? And in metas and in puzzles where one of the gimmicks is figure out what all these things have in common, sometimes Googling them just pops up a list that just has them all. It makes things real easy. Count everything. For example, if things have an exactly one-to-one correspondence, that's probably important. If things have the same number of letters as each other, that's probably important. If something is at exactly a 1-to-2 ratio, that's probably important, right? So take a look at those, because usually it tells you how things correspond to each other and maybe gives you a little bit of a nudge in the direction of what do I actually need to be thinking about to solve this puzzle. Look at everything again. If there's something you haven't used yet, this is a very common thing. Have you used the ordering that was presented to you, or do you need to find another one? Have you used the weird numbers that are in the middle of the image, or do they mean something else, right? Why is the flavor text worded the way it is? Why is the puzzle title the way it is? What's that weird animated GIF doing in the background, right? Stuff like that. It's a good puzzle writer will not put anything intentionally into the puzzle that is not used somewhere, because when you're doing puzzle hunting, it's very easy to provide those red herrings on your own, and it's considered bad form to, you know, distract teams any more than you need to, right? So if it looks like the puzzle writer had a decision that they made somewhere, it probably means something. Get fresh brains. This is a team sport. You know, if you don't know chess, maybe someone else does, right? If you are not familiar with AlphaGo's game records, maybe someone else is, right? If you don't know tunes from the 60s and 70s, if you're not familiar with all of the My Little Pony episode names, stuff like that, right? So, you know, get someone else to take a look. You're not alone, and it can help a lot. Back in the old days, before the internet was a thing, I believe there was one team whose like signature move was just to call a random expert in the field and get them to solve a puzzle for them, right? Like if an entire puzzle was written in Hindi, they would go to the local Hindi meetup and be like, hey, do you have time to read this thing that's written in Hindi for me, right? So like that was a thing, right? Anything other than broadcasting to other solvers or trying to get answers from other teams is pretty much fine, right? So, you know, grab your parents in for that one puzzle, get your grandma to knit this weird pattern that turns out to be a Sudoku, right? Stuff like that. Get fresh brains. Finally, take a break. Taking a break is fantastic. Make sure you get enough sleep, make sure you get enough food. And, you know, that's that whole shower thoughts thing, right? Sometimes the answer just comes to you when you're no longer under pressure to perform. So, you know, take a break, look at a different puzzle, look at something else entirely, go play some board games, watch an episode of your favorite show. take a shower, take a nap, get a drink, get a snack, things like that. You know, take it easier on yourself, because the prize for this hunt is having to write next year's hunt. So maybe give it a thought before you go hardcore and stay up for 72 hours trying to solve this thing, right? And finally, puzzles.mit.edu has another one of these lists. It is the Have You Tried list, and it goes into a bunch of specific puzzle solving techniques. You know, have you tried diagonalization? Have you tried reading the first letter of every word? Have you tried thinking about flag semaphore? Have you tried thinking about Braille? Have you counted the odd and even letters? Stuff like that, right? So, you know, there are many other iterations of this list that will be much more complete than what I can present in this time. This is one that we particularly like. Check it out. So yeah, those are things you might want to have tried. And finally, for newer solvers among us, remember that everyone on your team, much like the idea of, you know, grabbing fresh brains, everyone has valid contributions, right? Even if you're completely new, maybe you are the only person who has played every single board game in the BGG Top 100. If something looks like Agricola to you, maybe say that, right? So, you know, even if you don't get exactly the right idea, sometimes the silly joke that you told is going to help someone else be like, huh, I remember reading a book with that title once, you know, stuff like that. So, you know, say things, because the worst thing is 3 hours later, they finally get the aha and you're like, oh, I probably should have mentioned that, right? So, you know, everyone's got valuable contributions. Even if you're new to the team, you're very welcome to be on the mystery hunt thing, right? So, you know, don't be afraid to speak up. Remember to work with other people. Remember to take care of your basic biological needs. If you happen to be in a room with other people, as often happens during normal mystery hunts, but might happen now, remember to shower, for the love of God. You know, get sleep. You'd be surprised how much better you perform when you are well fed and well rested and all that other stuff. One of the things that we credit our victory in 2022 is the fact that we just had catered meals, right? Like, we made sure everyone was just, you know, getting enough food, getting enough water, all that other stuff, right? That was pretty great. And most importantly, have fun. You know, despite all the you know, red flag warnings that we like to put up about, oh, this is so brain melting and it's going to be impossible and you're going to be awake forever. Like, the point of the exercise is to have fun. If you're not having fun, do one of those things to take a break. If your team has been stuck on the same, you know, 10 puzzles the entire time, you know, let the hunt coordinators know, right? Palindrome will have some kind of way to reach out to them, or you can just email puzzle@mit.edu. And, you know, the worst thing they can do is say no, right? Maybe they'll give you a few extra hints. Maybe they'll send one of the writers to talk you through their puzzle, or maybe poke you in the right direction. If you're not having fun and you've set aside your entire weekend for this, it would really suck to lose your entire weekend, right? So if you're just like stuck and everything sucks, you know, just say so, because the worst that can happen is that, you know, you'll just have to walk away. But yeah, it's despite all the warnings, we are not trying to torture you beyond your level of consent. So yeah, if there are any other questions, we'd be happy to stay them, to answer them in chat. We'll be sticking around for, you know, 15-ish more minutes if anyone wants to ask questions. If you just want to talk shop, maybe take it somewhere else, because I want to make sure that our newer solvers can be heard above the memes. If you have questions about this upcoming hunt specifically, you can try emailing puzzle@mit.edu. Puzzle Club, the hunt coordinators, and Palindrome are all accessible through that email address. So if there's some burning question you have, maybe about, you know, the minor participation safety forms or anything like that, they will answer things much better than we can, because like we keep saying, this is just our experience from our past however many years of doing puzzle hunts. We don't know any specific details. But yeah, with all that said, if there are any questions, we'll answer them in chat, but otherwise, thanks for coming. We hope you learned something today, and we wish you the best of luck with the mystery hunt next week.